Hello, dear viewer. Thank you so much for following this African Morning Breakfast show coming to you right here on SBC. We move out from our studio and we're coming to you live from Juba Grants. My name is Majur Cholkor, and in these special editions of African Morning Breakfast show, we are going to look into the lifestyle of some South Sudanese who involve themselves in writings, book, and it is not only South Sudan, but African, I believe that they're not good readers, and we'll find out why South Sudanese involving themselves to write book and who will read them, and also what impact will this book have in South Sudanese. This is the second time that I'm going to host this author on SABC. I'm talking about South Sudanese Canadian Tabitha Biel Luak. Tabitha, good morning and welcome to African Morning Breakfast Show. Allow me to say it, I'm profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled to have you for the first time on African Morning Breakfast Show and the second time on SABC.
It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you so much.
I remember the first time we had an interview with you was late 2021 when you were coming from Canada to launch your book titled What a Godly Privilege to be Born a Man. And right now you're back to South Sudan. You have a right as a South Sudanese to come back to your own country. Welcome back to South Sudan and your word of greeting to South Sudanese.
Thank you so much. It's a blessing to be back again. Yes, I'm here.
You know, it is about 2 years down since that time we had an interview with you, and you were coming abruptly to launch your book, and going back, and now you're back in the country. You know, South Sudanese within the country, others are desperate to go to abroad, and while those in abroad are coming to the country. So what is the reason of coming back to your home?
I think it will always vary from one person to another. And of course, there are some cultural aspects when it comes to what we think of when it comes to coming back home and also trying to run away from home. Regardless of how people see it, home will always be home. And to me, home is always the best. Whether that we're talking about me or somebody else who feels the same way as wanting to come back home, it's just, there's nothing like home. Whatever is going on, it's something to be put an end by the people that owns a home, and we are the one.
I read some part in your book, and it is stated that you left South Sudan in 2011 to Canada, right. And now being back to South Sudan in 2021 and now in 2023 again. What do you think you enjoy about South Sudan compared to Canada?
Oh, my goodness. I enjoyed our culture very, very much. There is nothing like what we have. We might downgrade it. We might say things that are negative about it. It's never to say that it's bad. It's never to say that we rather have somebody else's culture than ours. I think there's something about us as Sudanese that is so unique that you can't find anywhere. You know, the uniqueness of our accommodations, of ourselves, and also about other people. It's just priceless. You can't find it somewhere else.
I will always keep referring you back to 2021 interview that we conducted with you when we were talking about your book, What a Godly Privilege to be Born a Man. And people who had an opportunity to follow you that very time know what your book title is. But right now, let's have a reminder that what is your book meaning, what a godly privilege, exactly what are the content in it in a brief way.
We had an opportunity to sit down in 2021 and talk about not just the title, but a little bit about what the content of the book itself. What a Godly Privilege to be Born a Man, as it were, is a title that speaks about the life of South Sudanese women. And when we say it is a godly privilege to be born a man, it's really about the decision making. And of course, when we talk about our cultures, we're not talking about how we need to abandon it because it's no longer useful, because it puts one person down and uplifts the other person. We're talking about the tiny things, or perhaps even big things within it, that need to be looked at, that need to be revised. And when we talked about the title itself, this is where the culture is brought in. It's a godly privilege to be born a man because the culture itself, and we can say not the culture because the culture doesn't create itself, but the culture is created by the people. That the people of South Sudan and the culture that they serve suppress the rights of women. It's a godly privilege to be born a man because a man is in a position of decisions where when one thing is being decided, we regard or we disregard what belongs and what is to serve a woman without understanding what the impact it will be on her. So it's a godly privilege to be born a man, and we feel that that privilege of being a man is being misused, or at least is used to kind of put women down and down.
Were you maybe talking about men as a male gender or a man in a God creation in the Bible that categorize, female and male gender as one? What man were you meaning in your book title?
What man is in this case, by nature, regardless of what's perhaps going on in the world, man is made a man. That's why we call him a man, right? And that's the difference between a man and a woman, because he is a man and a woman is a woman. But also when we looked at the creation in the beginning of it, there are works and responsibilities allocated to each one of us. You can't be a woman because there's something that involves in me becoming one. And I can never be a man because that is something different. So we're talking about a man being a man also being placed by God in that position to offside what is going on and lead perhaps and provide, as we all know, and protect, as we all know. What it feels like in the country that we have, in the church that we serve, is that what really matters is you appearing to be one, where you can resume and decide on behalf of everybody else except the impact that will then result from the decision that you make on behalf of.
Yes, Tabitha, let me cut you short. When you sit down and decide to be an author, to write this book, when did you start it, and how did you feel being an author right now? Attending to different events that you are one of South Sudanese writers, maybe being recognized in some event, in some programs. How do you feel as a female being an author?
I mean, for me, it's a place of responsibility, of course, to have, a place on this setting and say something perhaps worthy of being looked at by other women and also by younger generation. It's a place of responsibility for me. I don't take it lightly. I don't think that this is a position to be abused. This is a position to just think that I am better than anybody. This is a position that I think I can exercise to take what belongs to somebody. No, it's a place of responsibility for me. It feels honored to be one, but it also feels like I have to be very, very careful in terms of what I put there, because people are listening, especially the young.
Yes, I always look at what you write in your book, and when someone reads, he or she will ask herself or himself that, is this story real that Tabitha wrote about? So how did you sit down to write your book? Were you looking at real stories, or you were just writing them, giving an imagination?
This is based on true stories. This book, as we are talking about privileges, I think growing up in South Sudan, because I didn't grow up in the Western world, growing up in this country gave me the ability to look at things. Though I left, I would say I was mature enough to digest what's going on and understand how things are set in the society before I leave. So that gives me an understanding of what's going on. This story, as it is, it's not my story. It's a story of every other woman that you know. But at the time that I was exposed to know their stories and understand what's going on in their lives. Yeah.
You talk about taking an opportunity, taking this decision to be an author. It is an act of responsibility upon yourself. Were you trying to fight against the negative cultures being, imposed on women in South Sudan, or what was your target?
As I said in 2021, the reason why I left and I needed to not publish or not launch for the very first time this book in other places is because it's a story that reflects the culture of the Sudanese. Because the true stories that were happening to South Sudanese women. When it comes to what ideas and what are you fighting about, I don't think it's more about the fight. It's more about bringing something that already exists in the system, that already exists in the culture, something that is not foreign. When we look at it, we say exactly, this is how my aunt is living her life. This is how my uncle is dealing with this. I'm not fighting because I'm not fighting alone if I were to go that road. I am informing my society. I am telling my people that these are the stories that we are dealing with every day. And it is time for us to look at this, revise what we serve that doesn't serve us back, and say enough is enough. Because we're being hurt in the mix, we're being hurt in the middle of it. We need to be able to sit back and say, how are they serving us? And if they don't, we need to be careful. I want it that way because once you take something that belongs to somebody else and say, I want my life to reflect what belongs to someone else. Let's say if we're saying we're going to change our life and we're going to change our culture to reflect the life of the people in the Western world, we will soon lose everything that we have. We need to be able to decide for ourselves that here is what's going on. Here's what's going on, and this is how we can take a look at it. And once we take a look at everything, we can then come up with what to replace what's wrong. We can come up with what's right for us.
So you said it is always feel good to be at home. Mm-hmm. And now you are looking at informing your fellow South Sudanese through what you write in your book. Now you're back in the country. Apart from the book, what are you doing as a life changing for your fellow South Sudanese?
Ever since I returned to Canada, I have been fortunate enough to create an organization, a non-profit organization, and it goes by the name the Young Learn Africa Foundation. And in this organization, it's based in Canada as we're speaking, but we began this to kind of deal with the issues that we're dealing with in Canada as a community, as a Sudanese community, because our youth are going the direction that is not pleasant. It's not going to go well for them. So we created that organization to both work here and in other countries as well in Canada. So what it does, it's working with schools, working with local schools. We promote reading cultures. We provide educational tools, as we've done in Kakuma, with the communities in Kakuma. We provide those ones. We also serves as a place where we can have conversation about when it comes to cultural differences and things like that. But the biggest things that we're dealing with and what we're doing is to really focus on education, how to use education in terms of bringing girls back to school, because we're talking about girls being taken as early as the time that I was taken, but I was already even old if you compare me with other girls.
What was the time you were taken?
13, at age 13. Some were taken as early as 7, 8 and things like that. So we want to be able to work with school, but also be a platform that advocates for girl education. Girls have to go to school, and that is one of the biggest way to put this fight to an end.
Well, thank you so much, Tabitha. And you did mention that you have an organization that is going to deal and impact the life of South Sudanese, looking at the educations and other aspects of life. We'll come and find out, because you mentioned that you have carried out some activities in Kakuma, and I believe Kakuma is not in South Sudan, it is in Kenya. Yeah. And we'll find out also whether you are planning to do the same activities within South Sudan, senior in Juba or not. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following these special editions of African Morning Breakfast Show. We move out from our studio and we're coming to you from Juba Grand, right here in South Sudan capital, Juba. My name remains as Maju Cholkor, and in these editions we are glad to have Tabitha Biel-Luak, an author of a book titled What a Godly Privilege to be Born a Man. We'll come and find out more of what she is planning to do for South Sudanese in Juba. And this is the coffee. Get yourself and let's have a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, dear viewer. Thank you so much for continuing following African Morning Breakfast Show, coming to you right here on SABC. As I stated earlier, we move out from our studio. We are coming to you from Juba Grand, right here in South Sudan capital, Juba. We're looking at the stories of South Sudanese author Tabitha Biel-Luak on how she is changing South Sudanese and how the readers' life through our book, and also other related activities that she's planning to do for South Sudanese in South Sudan. And allow me to say it, Tabitha, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
As we went for break, we were trying to look at your other activities that you did mention to do for South Sudanese, especially in South Sudan. But before we go there, tell us a little bit maybe of the book and what you want to share with people, especially some of your quotes.
The stories of this book, content in this book, again, are true stories. Real people, real Sudanese women living these lives. I would like to read for us, but before I read for us, there's 3 categories that this book is divided into. What it looks at the lives of South Sudanese women as a girl, what she is to her family, what sort of expectations that are kind of anticipated from the family, or the family from her. But also it looks at the lives of South Sudanese women when they move from one family to another. As we all know, when it comes to marriage, marriage is a business between families. And I really did say it business because when we looked at it, if we're really, really honest, the way it's dealt with is a business. It's just nothing else. But it looks at the life of South Sudanese women as they shift from one place to another. In this case, from her father's house to the man who marries her. And the life that she lives, the expectations surrounding what she is to that family. But it also looks at the society in general, what expectations there are just around her, what society says she is, what values assigned to her, when those values are no longer valuable, what to say about her, when should we say she's no longer worthy, and so on. That's what this is divided into.
Exactly.
I hope we have an opportunity you have an opportunity to read it. So I want to read something to you. And this is a conversation between an old lady and a young lady. And it says, "Today your men are somewhat better," said the old lady. "God knows I am not easy to live with. He knows me, and a man like that cannot be cooked from the same fire fan. We cannot be ready, interrupted another woman. Sure, and it is fascinating how God gives one according to her attitude and leads the non-classic one into the hands of pain. I have hard times understanding that part, said the old lady. And then she got up. Ready? She has the young lady. She gave her a hand, and they were on their way. And until the two disappeared out of their sight, none of the other 5 women realized the entire stories of their unnamed friend was the story of the young lady they were all familiar with. They cannot understand even the tiniest glimmers of what you've been through, said the old lady. The young lady nodded her head because they haven't lived it themselves. What can I say? They have all cooked for God, haven't they? Said the young lady. Or it could be because of this. You see, a behavior that is due to cultural practice is like the creativity of an artist. The beauty of creativity does not rely on the quality of sameness, but rather on the individuality of one creativity. Likewise, the notion of being rough, ungentle, unfair is by far allowed in this way of life. And so it is up to individuals to appropriate the behavior according to their heart's desires. Unfortunately, this more creative individual shows you, said the old lady.
Wow. So this is the old lady talking to
another character called young lady.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And dear viewer, you have an opportunity to grab for yourself one copy of the book, and I believe you have them right here in Juba.
I do have a few copies as well, yes, with us here.
And the worst part of it, South Sudanese are not commonly on digital marketing, but I don't know, you also sell them online?
So we have this book online already. It's on Amazon, and it is on all bookstore, online bookstore basically. If you type "what a godly privilege to be born a man," you would be surprised. It is even in some places, when I looked at it, it's like I don't even recognize that language, but it is there. So you're not going to miss it. It's online. Just take a look at the title and you'll be able to locate where it is. But here in Juba, we have copies available. Please do reach out to me and get your copy. Each of this copy only costs about $35 a copy. So, and it will be yours.
Good. Let's now come back to our business of what you are planning to do for South Sudanese in South Sudan, either in Juba in particular or in outskirts of Juba or capital. So what are you trying to do for young people, women, men and girls in South Sudan based on your organization?
When we talk about what to do kind of situations requires all of us. And I always remind people that this work of ours is bigger than we think. That whenever it comes to doing the parts that needed to be done, each one of us will have to do something. And that's why I'm here to do my part. With our organization, again, going back to education, and I really believe in education because when we talked about freeing people, we talk about cultural, this cultural impact in terms of the bad part of it and how it affects women. We really can't free women, especially the young one, without giving the opportunity and giving them the right that is going to school. So we would love to be and are, of course, willing to work with the local schools where we provide first and foremost readings, and we have a project called inbuilt in school inbuilt libraries, where we build libraries within the school and work within and provides reading culture, basically reading to students, so then they can excel in that way and move on to a better, more understanding kind of learning, but also advocates for the young girls to go to school. And I think that when we talk about Juba being the main one, we know that much of the things we're talking about are a little bit lifted perhaps, but the surrounding is still dealing with these things. We have a very thick and rich culture, and it's in some ways really believed that girls is just for marriage. So we will love to see what we could do as an organization, where we can help, but of course working with the community. I don't believe in forcing people, and when we come back to our own culture, I think the way to go is to be able to table any concern that we have and be able to talk to people and say, this is bad and also why. This is good, but also why.
Yes, Tabisa, based on your book, I learned a little bit about who you are. And your book is telling us that you were born and raised in South Sudan, and later moved to Canada. Now, if you were born and raised in South Sudan, that means you know almost 90% of South Sudanese cultures. So do you say there are some negative South Sudanese cultures that you need, as someone who was born and raised in South Sudan, to work against them, so that South Sudanese should be known of positive part of the culture?
Absolutely, and I think I'll have to start that example with me. I think someone who is 13 at this age is someone that should be considered as a child. What we normally see around the rest of the world is someone has to be 18 to be considered an adult. And only that after would we consider that person to make decisions on their behalf, but also make bigger decisions like marriage. Because when we talk about marriage, we're not talking about something simple. We're talking about life decisions, because that person, we don't know when that person will leave this earth. And however that long is to be considered, because however she lives and whatever situation that will surround her is something that will impact her for the rest of her life. So someone who's being given to a person at that age is someone whose right has been taken away. And if we begin there, that children are children up until they are adult, will then take care of the first part of the damage. And that is saying, we're not going to give you to anybody, to whoever that person is, in hopes that there is a return, which in this case, in our culture, is the return of dowries. We exchange kids with dowries, and we say that this is okay just because of that return. And we don't look at who is taking the child, and that child right is taken. So if we begin there, if we can really take care of when child is taken, because of course, if she reaches an age where she's able to say what she wants and perhaps even understand where she's going, and then we are at a much better position than if children are being taken care of.
Yes, Tabitha, I want to take you back to giving an example of yourself that you were given away by your parents when you were 13 years old. And these are part of the negative cultures you want to talk about them, so that they should not be practiced at this time. You're talking also of education. Now, as someone who beat the odds, and you are now looking at changing the life of other fellow South Sudanese, what are you going to do to reach out to these parents, these mothers and fathers at the rural areas? Because if you're talking of education, you're impacting the life of people that are a little bit having some clue of education, but now going to the rural areas, how are you going to reach these people? Because I believe the time you were given, maybe your parents were in the villages. So now to fight this fight, you have to go back to the villages.
Absolutely. There are so many ways to reach the same conclusion. When we talk about what to do now that we know these are impacting the lives of girls, we're talking about making laws available. Things that are there to preventing this kind of behavior, this kind of things happen to girls. But of course, when we go that way, we know that usually it doesn't happen. It struck me that I learned lately, it's not because we don't have laws. We actually have laws against the right or anything like these practices that say we cannot give this kid away. But it seemed like the more we have those laws in place, the more they are practiced. So one of the things and one of perhaps effective ways to follow, now that we have laws and yet they are not being followed, is to be able to speak to the communities and be honest about the impact of this situation, of these practices.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Tabisa, for making it to African Morning Breakfast Show. Before we end up this interview, I want to look into your activities and angles of having relationship with different stakeholders apart from your beneficiaries, because if you're talking of what to do, you're looking at the youth, the education and all this. These are going to be beneficiaries of your activities. But what is your plans with different stakeholders, for example, the government, different NGOs? What do you want them to do for you in order to reach to the activities that you want to implement in South Sudan?
We are very aware that we already have people that are doing what we hope to also be doing, and in a very effective way. But the more there are people to also work toward the same thing, the better we can achieve and perhaps even faster reach the goal that we are hoping to reach. What we're hoping to see and what we're hoping to see happen for us, and also as we move around within communities, is to be able to partner with the people that already are doing this kind of practices and services to the communities. And as well, when it comes to government, I know that they're trying their level best to work toward ending all of this as well. But again, the more the better, and that's why we also want to add what we could do as an organization to put all of this to an end.
In short, do you need any support from the government as per now?
Do we need support? I think support, when it comes to from the government and also from other people, it's to enhance the services. We're open to all kind of help. We can do what we plan and what we're thinking we can help our communities without either government or the community or the organizations that are available already.
Well, thank you so much, Tabisa. Finally, if I've not touched anything, what you were thinking to talk about in less than 1 minute, and your message to South Sudanese.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity this morning, and to my fellow South Sudanese community. I was here about 2 years ago. Hasn't been 2 years yet, but about 2 years ago, and I spoke about the importance of having conversation, beginning to have conversation about all of this. I know that there are my sisters and brothers that already traveled this road, speaking about the same thing that I'm talking about. What I'm hoping to see as a person belonging in this community is to see change. Because I think the things that have affected me were not just affecting me as a person, but they also were affecting every other girls. And it's our responsibility to put this to an end. Let's work together. And that begins with dialogues. Let's have conversation, even if it means within the family.
Well, thank you so much, Tabitha. And dear viewer, thank you so much for following these special editions of African Morning Breakfast Show. This morning, where we look at the life journey of Tabisa becoming an author and what she's thinking to change in the life of other fellow South Sudanese, and also the readers, because the reader might not be a South Sudanese, but someone who get inspired on how she wrote her book titled What a Godly Privilege to be Born a Man. And after this far, thank you so much for blessing this African Morning Breakfast Show.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.